So we're going to talk about 5 must-dos when it comes to a company that wants to innovate. Any company, but especially a multinational company with a GSE center in India or anywhere else. Our experiences come from India. So we know startups innovate, right? I mean, startups, the very existence of startups is because they innovate. They have to do something different to be able to capture the market and grow. Large companies need to innovate, but there are always challenges. So that's kind of one of the aspects that we all deal with in large companies that we're going to discuss. There's a need to innovate. I mean, often people think that large companies like have an existing steady business. They don't need to innovate. That's not the case as well. Larger companies need to innovate. We need to look within and look without. And like we saw, like we reach out to the ecosystem as we just saw in the previous panel, and then also what we can do from within each of our organizations. And of course, the whole culture element. Who hates time? Like the time, we all know the Time Media House, large media house, Times operations in India. We have Navneet, who runs Target. In India, again, a very large operations. And of course, he's known for something else entirely right now. But I've never heard of Navneet until he started the accelerator, but now I know him. So, but what is not so widely known is like he runs a very, very large GIC in Bangalore. And Ganesh Vaidiswaran, who's MD of Accenture India. And the perspective Ganesh brings in is like he had a startup that was acquired by Accenture. So, I mean, in fact, knowing Accenture, I was surprised that Accenture acquired product companies, but I believe Accenture does acquire product companies. So, and so this is a very interesting perspective, and myself, I run the India Lab for Progress Software, which is a Boston-based company, and so we've been dabbling with innovation as well. So I'm going to go sit there. So this is going to be a conversation. We don't have any presentations. So let me just, so the perspective we bring is like all of us have some exposure with innovation and hopefully some visible success. We believe there was success, but hopefully it is visible success as well with innovation in different ways, all 4 of us, slightly different perspectives, and all 4 of us bring in a GIC angle. We are all GICs, and innovation in GICs has an additional dimension in terms of the challenge to be able to do it. So let me just start with Navneet. I mean, large company, multinational company, and like in the retail space, very, very cutthroat competition. And so why do you have to innovate, especially in your GIC?
Okay, hi everyone. Can you hear me at the back? Okay, I want to just start by saying thank you to Arjun for doing the PR for us. I did not pay Arjun for that, but we did have drinks a couple of days ago, so thank you. So yeah, why innovate? I think it's a really good question, and something that's probably top of mind for every one of us. I don't think it's a choice anymore. It's something we all have to do because we're living in disruptive times. You know, we're living, in this era where the rate of change is perhaps the highest ever in the history of mankind. And most large companies and industries have been disrupted over the last decade. I mean, retail is clearly one of them, but you could, think of any other industry, whether it's banking or airlines. The digital disruptions hit all of us, and we really have now an opportunity to be disruptors ourselves, and that's or perish. So I think innovation is absolutely critical, and it is really a response to surviving and succeeding in the future. But it's not easy, and we heard a lot about the ecosystem discussion in the panel before. It's not an easy change for companies that have been successful. I think success is the biggest inhibitor for innovation because you tend to believe that what you've done well over the last several decades or years will something that can help you tide over the changes around you. So figuring out how can you bring about the cultural change, how do you get the right talent mix, how do you have an external focus are all considerations I think companies have to think about. So we can talk more about that as we go along.
Yeah, we'll get to it. So before, talking about innovation, Sejal, like your experience with Time here was like you said you had to make a case and it was not a corporate decision.
No.
You had to make a case, plan the idea that let's start a GIC, and then that opened up some doors for homegrown innovation. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, so we were one of the few GICs that we had to convince the Home Office that Bangalore would be a great place to open a global in-house center. So we started, just some history, and is that we started about 8 years ago with one person, me, trying to convince the Home Office that India had a tremendous amount of talent, and that talent would be very valuable to media. And the case that we were making was actually not technology-based. It was the pure intellectual power that we could use analytics in media and talk about an old industry. Time and Time magazine is 92 years old, and publishing is being highly disrupted. So, and they didn't care, and that was awesome. They said, go do what you need to do, figure out where the money is. We're not going to give you a whole lot of money, but you can do it. They said you can do it, and then they left us alone. And the most amazing thing happened, because we were on no one's radar, innovation was coming from all parts of the organization. So we were growing, we were small, and we were working on audience development, on audience analytics on the digital side, on the tablet, on regular circulation. And there was innovation coming from all parts of the business because no one in the Home Office really cared or paid any attention. And we were given the freedom to fail and the freedom to innovate. And when you're given that freedom, the infrastructure becomes a petri dish of innovation. And that was really what drove us. Then 3 years later, 5 years later, we become 300 people, 400 people. We get under the radar. So we're at a tipping point in terms of when you do become a focus of attention, that unfortunately halts innovation. And so we are at that precipice now. You want me to talk about that?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So that's where politics comes in. And I thought that question from the young man from HP was really good. One of the challenges with being a GIC is that you're not the Home Office. As much as we would like to be the Home Office, and people say, this is our other office, this is our Asia office, we're not the Home Office. And I think that when you become on the radar, the Home Office wants to treat you like the Home Office. And so you have all the processes, you have the bureaucracy, and you often have people who think they know what's best for your group, 7,000 miles away, beginning to dictate that. And that suffocates innovation. And that's when, and unfortunately success has many, many fathers and mothers, and that's also what happens. And so I'm not encouraging you to be subversive, but I think you need to be a little subversive. And I think Navneet has done that with the accelerator. And I think that's awesome, right?
You're getting great brand.
I think that it's really, really important. And it's important at the leadership level, but it's also important at every level to constantly challenge the status quo and say, okay, New York, my home office sits in New York, and we're an old media company. You may say that's what you want to do, but it turns out we have other options, and we keep pushing, and you're able to face rejection and do it again. In some ways, you actually have to be incredibly entrepreneurial to do it.
I think I'm sure you have some executive support, both of you. I mean, there should be some executive support. We have to play the organization. I hate to use the word politics, but that's what it is.
It is politics.
It is. So you have to play the organizational politics, play your peers, use the support of the executive. And I believe, I'm sure that's probably your experience as well, the show and tell beats everything else. That's where your subversive comes. I mean, below the radar, do certain things. So long as it is good, it's relevant, and then it surfaces, then it kind of at least establishes that we're capable of doing it. So that's a large company challenge. But Ganesh, you had a very different experience. You were a startup that was acquired. Yeah. So how's that transition being? I mean, a startup inherently is very innovative. I mean, they have to be kind of very quick on the feet, think quick, deliver quick, and right? And from there, getting to a very large organization. How's that transition been?
So I know you talked about whether Accenture acquires companies. So for the record, I want to say that Accenture does acquire a lot of companies. In fact, we do about 11 to 12 dozen acquisitions every year. And I am part of Accenture Software. This came into being in 2011, where we sort of recognized that IP plays a big role in differentiating sort of MNCs, services companies. And my journey has been that as part of this strategic intent of developing IP, this came about almost 7-10 years ago. But then when we sold our company, our startup, that happened 2008. And my sort of professional and personal passion and mission was sort of do more out of India. We already had a development center out of Chennai, and we were doing mostly sort of low, sort of bottom of the V model kind of work at that time. And what I wanted to do was, with that acquisition back in June when I relocated from the US, I said, why can't we do more out of the people? Because I was in the Bay Area. I spent about 15 years there. And every person that you meet there, product manager, engineer, smart engineers, they're all Indians, a lot of Indians. And I said, what is it that's different for people here versus people in India? Why can't we do the same thing here? And I recognized it's really about the exposure. Somebody talked about, the gentleman talked about getting close to the market. That's the biggest challenge. It's really getting close. Necessity is the mother of invention, is what they say. So getting close to your customer market is one of the biggest, I would say, prereqs to understand what are sort of the challenges that you have out there. So what I started doing was initially when we got acquired, again, going back to the bureaucracy of the organization, there was no Accenture software at that time. So it was 2 years of, we were just acquired, we were like an asset and we were trying to grow, and there was no investment. We were not behaving and operating like a software company. And 2011, about late 2010, is when we formed Accenture Software, where we had lots of folks like us at pockets within Accenture doing industry vertical software, whether it's banking, financial services, retail, or in my case, freight and logistics. We got all of us together. That sort of gave us that community and the platform for behaving, operating like a product company. So initial 2 years, going back to what you asked, was not the greatest times, but it's really the passion and the perseverance that you need to have to make it happen. So in my case, I started investing in our people to get closer to the market, not just the market and the customers, but also get closer to the overall industry ecosystem. So whether it's our guys from here going out there to meet the customers in key phases of what we do in terms of implementation, or whether it's sending them to the industry conferences or conferences like here, is something that I did, right? That's one. The second is, how do you then tailor, get the right people? Because we all have our own mental sort of cultural gravity, right? I observed when in our own development center, because we're used to doing certain things in a certain way. So asking a question or challenging the status quo, like you said, was not part of the culture. So how do you make that difference is you basically get the right talent at the leadership level, at different levels, who have had that exposure and confidence, inject them into the organization, and they bring about the change. It doesn't happen overnight, but it happens over time.
That's a big challenge, right? I mean, finding people with that mindset, with a hacking mindset, is a big challenge. I mean, innovation partly starts from there.
Exactly.
They have to be a little bit like curious, kind of resourceful, be able to go experiment, try. And we don't get that. In fact, we have an initiative in Hyderabad called Hyderabad Hackers. We want to do 60 hackathons in the next 6 months and have a hiring event for product companies at the end of it. Primarily targeting college grads. I mean, fresh out of college, people don't hack. They just kind of, you don't get that mindset. So that's one of the culture challenges. The Business Connect is a culture challenge. We don't have kind of close contact with the customers. In your case, Navneet, being predominantly a software center, how do you get that customer connect? Because software centers are generally back office. You don't meet customers or the business friends. How do you manage that customer connect perspective?
Great question, and I want to clarify, we're not a software center, so we are a second headquarters, and I'm going to play on what Sejal said. We look at ourselves as an extension of our Minneapolis headquarters, and we do all aspects of retail functions from here, including core retail functions like merchandising or marketing. Of course, we do a lot of software development. We do analytics from here, and that is key.
So the co-location of those functions is key.
Yeah, and that is key because without that context, without that expertise, and without the trust you built over years, so we are also a 10-year-old GIC, and that gives you scale, that gives you maturity. That gives you the leadership depth in your local business to be able to engage in more innovative discussions. I think without that, for example, getting an accelerator going does not make sense. Right? So part of the accelerator story is the external factors driving disruption, and hence the appetite to do something new is there. Clearly, there's a lot of sponsorship from headquarters to be able to indulge in something like this. But from a local ecosystem perspective, if you don't have that maturity or the business context, You're actually, doing this for the sake of, pushing a technology. The key here in our mindset is how do you take this innovation and mainstream that? And that, requires navigating global politics, that requires figuring out, the business connections. But I think that is important, and that's true even if you were in headquarters, right? You'd still have to
Absolutely.
navigate
Yes,
that.
yes.
So I think there are pros and cons of existing out of a location like India, which is 10,000 miles away from, your core headquarters, where you get a little bit of a leeway to innovate, staying under the radar, as Sejal pointed out. But then the challenge is, of course, how do you mainstream your work? So figuring that out, that combination is the secret sauce. And I think the more we think about it holistically, the more the chances of success. So culture is an important part of it, and the company culture has to be ready to absorb some of this. So I spoke about the disruption that retail is going through and the changes we are going through within Target in terms of becoming a more nimble, more agile, risk-taking, externally focused company. And I think that is conducive then to doing something like this.
I think bubbling up the whole offshore, getting off especially from the rest of the company, bubbling up from being an offshore center to actually an extension of the company. That's a mindset shift. Like 10 years is a good time for that to happen, but that's something we have to work. It doesn't automatically happen. If you don't do much from this end, it will always be that remote, offshore, low-cost center. I think we have to constantly create that value. Talking about above radar that Navneet referred to. So what happened now? You said after 5 years, kind of you're getting above radar, in your case, Sejal. Yes. Once the GIC here got above radar and like kind of started getting noticed, what are the challenges there? I mean, how do you continue that culture of
Sure.
innovation once you get into that point where people want, like you said, success
Sure.
of many fathers?
And it literally just happened. So the timing of this panel is great. We sort of came out, our senior management came last year and they liked what they saw. So last week, we actually are rebranded to Time Inc. India. So very similar to Target, we are Time Inc. India, we're on the website. And so now we're at that place. And my challenge, or the challenge of our organization, is really how do you preserve, which I think was a good thing, the us versus them. We have to prove something. We have to innovate to make sure we show our value without getting too fat. Because I think one of the things that happens when you become legitimate and you become a global in-house center, and this is happening to us, is that you get lulled into the corporate mindset, which also has its own challenges with innovation, right? Our New York office is also going through its own disruption, as I mentioned. And so you want to keep that edge. And one of the things that we do specifically, and this is something we did from the very beginning, is all of our teams have a BHAG. Right, and the BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal, and that's part of every quarterly review. And at the end of the quarterly review, we spend about 45 minutes on it. And there's no judgment, we just talk about it. And it's my management team and the individual teams, and it's real. It's something that we pay a lot of attention to, and it's part of their business. And it empowers your people, because I think one of the things I've noticed, and I'm sure people will back me up here, is innovation comes from all sections of the organization. I am, I guarantee, the least innovative member of my team, by far. Innovation comes from the fresh out of college person. Innovation comes from the analytics person, the developer, and from all different areas, and you have to unleash it. I think it was mentioned. You have to provide a system that will allow someone not to be afraid to say, oh, I have this idea. It may be the world's worst idea, but you have to allow for that to burble up and for us to talk about it and say, okay, let's fail, and let's fail fast, and let's make sure that we reward failure. Well, one of the things that we talk about that's in our culture is if you don't fail enough, it means you're not taking enough chances.
Yes.
So it's really important. That's hard to do, and I don't want to underemphasize this, hard to do when you're a global in-house center. A lot of us are public companies. You have quarters you have to meet. It's very easy to say we want to fail and we embrace failure when the market is beating you up for embracing failure. But we have to figure out how to do that. And that, to me, I think is the burden of the leadership.
Absolutely.
I think that's the burden of the
Talking
leadership.
on the same, like starting the accelerators, I'm sure it's at the end of a long path I'm sure there should have been a culture of innovation within Target India, right? If you could make a case and get an accelerator created. So how do you get that, like, I mean, going back to the whole culture and the risk taking, with few thousand people some years back, 6,000 people now, how do you kind of try and get that culture across the organization, not just in the accelerator, which is easy to do. There are startups coming there. But across the organization, how do you get that going up? I'm sure the accelerator helps some way to, but what are the other things you do to get that?
I think it's a lot of the things we spoke about, and Sejal just touched upon a couple of them. I think it's enabling this culture of failing fast, making sure risk taking is okay. And that's not easy, as I said earlier. It's a very, very non-trivial task and a situation. So you need the right leadership tone. You need the right environment. Some of it you can do entrepreneurially, given that you're under the radar, but over time you've got to make it mainstream.
Yes.
So building that culture is absolutely critical, and over-investing in that is important. So you got to figure out, the right stories to share. You got to figure out, the right examples that you can highlight and celebrate within the company. You got to take risks and, be ready to be, wrapped on the knuckles for that, or and then rebound from that. So that culture was important. We most of us, and in Target for absolutely, we've had innovation programs in the company for a while, right? We would do hackathons, we would do other, efforts which are more structured. And those are more entrepreneurial in nature. You actually encouraging your teams to do, bring forth ideas. And those have a purpose. They serve, some goal for sure. But the coming together of the culture, the right tone, the right talent. So we've been bringing in talent that is disruptive in nature, and having the right mix of disruptors and consolidators within the company is important. I may have all of the passion for innovation, but if I haven't been a disruptor myself, it's very hard to be the change agent. So we've been lucky to be going through a time where we're infusing fresh talent into the company that comes with a very different mindset that says, why does it take 100 people to build a new code? Why can't we do it with 5? Right? When you have some of those, and if you can balance that with the right set of consolidators within the company, I think then you start to build momentum around this. And then I think being open to an external influence is important. And that goes very much against being, if you've been very, very successful, you tend to get inward focus because you start believing in your own story. And, having the mindset to change that and say, I'm going to learn from the outside, and that's where the accelerator comes in for us. We are saying that we need to learn from everyone, big or small, whether it's within the company, outside the company, whether it's a developer inside or outside. And I think that's helped us a lot. Whether we get something tangible out of the accelerator or not is yet to be seen. Our early results have been positive, but that's besides the point. The point is that just working with these young folks who have a very different way of operating, who can, a 2-person company can get a product out in 4 months, and that's inspiring our own teams. And that's why we are out here today, because we want to be part of this ecosystem. We want to be continuing to learn from this ecosystem.
One thing that we have seen also work well for us, we have the summer internship program, which we use them only to build idea prototypes. And like it's an excellent field that you're talking about. When you have these young, college kids like all into and willing to put in 20-hour days, very resourceful, we get some smart kids, and we use them to build idea prototypes. It's 10 weeks. We get, for our size, we only get about 12 to 15 interns. We get 6 to 8 idea prototypes built. At least half of it makes it into the product, eventually in some form. So, and you're right, that's an influence on our teams. Suddenly, you can't be rusty anymore. You have this smart, bright kid sitting with us. And so that's an interesting point that you mentioned, external influence. Just one more point, Ganesh, the whole business connect, you're referring to the business connect. I think that I feel is a big challenge. It's one thing to have the leadership, the will, and also the right enablers in terms of the talent and the intent, that we are willing to go take those risks and try and do something innovative. But something else, entirely something else for that to be relevant. And the relevance is the business relevance. And in your experience, how do you get that? I'm not sure how much of the teams are at the customer site.
So in my case, I'm fortunate, I'm sort of one of the, out of the 10 product units or software units within Accenture Software, Freight and Logistics is the only one where 100% of product management engineering happens out of here.
And so the customers are?
Customers are global.
Okay.
So I have customers all over, pretty much in all continents except Africa. which helps in a way. But when you have, let's say, your customers only, let's say, in the US, let's say our insurance product is like that, then it becomes a little bit of a challenge where you sort of invest in your people, sort of spend time closer to the market, and you plan that in advance. But in my case, because of the nature of my market, I was able to get that happen, but it doesn't come without challenges. The first thing is we are within a large services company. We are, for a long time, operated like a factory, which means our focus is on efficiency and execution. And we work to the specs that was designed by someone else, right? And this is where, within this culture, I have to bring about how do you build a product problem-solving mindset, right? How do you bring that culture? And that is the key. I think how you make that happen is to go from factory to an engineering mindset. And for that, like I said, you have to invest in your people, we have to get the right type of talent injected. So I have been working with our people. If you use the same channels that you have for your recruitment, for your rest of the organization, that's not going to be relevant for us to build that challenging the status quo kind of culture. So that's going to be important. The second big thing, which is, in my case, I don't have to work under the radar because I'm running a software unit, and yearly there is an investment. We invest in a multi-year roadmap. So it's very important to earmark portions of your investment for innovation.
Open innovation, yeah.
And that's very, very important. And we also run initiatives where we have this coding contest that we do annually within Accenture Software, where you have to sort of, initially I had to nudge my people to go participate in those. But then I've been doing this for the last few years, and you see automatically more and more people want to participate because there's a sense of fulfillment. And the way you get that is, a lot of these ideas are real business problems that they solve, and that gets then invested, if it's viable, gets invested in your multi-year roadmap. We also run industry innovation village, because in my case, the challenge is a little different. We have a large consulting services organization that has frontline industry experience. We have huge high-performance industry research that's going on. How do I then leverage my vast resource and knowledge capital that I have across Accenture globally, using collaboration, bring that to bear within my technology? So it's really about convergence of that industry, that knowledge that we already have, and then use the technology to make it happen in a product, right? And that collaboration it's available out there, but it gets, because we are so big, it doesn't, we don't get maximum
In
leverage.
fact, like, I sometimes feel like we beat ourselves up too much.
Yeah.
So we had this thing like a few years back, we were doing things by ourselves, what a little innovation we were doing. When somebody looked at at that time we had 7 different development centers. And somebody from the CTO office went and looked at all these centers for almost few months. And finally, when he proposed his innovation plan for the company, and he talked about what innovation is happening, he said the only place where innovation was happening in the company was in our Hyderabad labs. And we thought we were not doing enough. And it turns out like others are doing even less. I mean, so I think large companies have different dynamics. Yeah. And same with even the customer perspective. We kept saying like there are no customers in India, so we don't get to see customers, meet customers, we don't get that perspective. And then finally it turns out like even our US offices, engineers don't get to meet. There are few people in engineering that get to meet. Product management, of course, gets to meet. But most engineers don't have the customer connect. So we probably beat ourselves up a little more than we should. We're probably not so bad. So the time's been blinking for some time. We can take maybe a few questions before, I don't know, somebody come. I'm already standing here. I'm sorry, I didn't notice you.
No problem.
So I think I will just continue to ignore it for some time. We can take a few questions before we head out for lunch.
Hi, I'm Srinath from Accenture, work with Ganesh. But the question actually is for Sajal. Sajal, you had mentioned that in the early years you were under the radar, you had freedom to operate, and you were small. Then you became successful and started growing. And then things like cost arbitrage in India starts creeping in. Then you quickly start becoming more of an engineering services factory kind of organization, as opposed to the innovation center that you were. How do you prevent this from happening? How do you make sure you don't get diluted in the long run?
So I think you have to be incredibly vigilant and conscious of it. I think one of the things that I'd like to talk about is, I think we've talked about innovation in a very conventional sense, which I think is good, but there's also an unconventional way you can do innovation. How you serve lunch in your cafeteria is a different way, right? How you do your performance reviews. Like, I actually think that if we put our energy and thought into it, but you have to live it every day. So one of the things that we've been trying to do within Time Inc. India is to infuse that, is to say, okay, we have to follow these rules, for the larger global organization, but locally, these are the types of things that we want to do. And just having that as your walk, and you walk your walk, you talk your talk. This sounds crazy, and I'm sure that none of the GICs do this, but whenever there's a new employee, I invite them into my office, we have tea, we talk about it, and when they say, thank you, ma'am, or madam, I say, absolutely not, I'm Sejal. And I said, you should absolutely not call anyone in this office madam or sir. That's just, you're living it. So I think part of it is you have to live it every day. I, by no means, have the solution. It's something we struggle with every day, but it needs to be top of mind, because if it's not top of mind, you'll lose it. It's not something you just do on Fridays. It's something that you have to live and breathe daily.
Can we have any other questions?
Hi, my name is Sriram. The question is to Mr. Ganesh. You did talk about changing the mindset from factory to engineering mindset, trying to get the proper, change the way you recruit, infuse the people who are going to do that. How do you do that? How do you get those people? It's pretty hard to find such kind of people.
Absolutely. I think it's a continuing journey for me over the last 6 years. I think there are a bunch of things that we have done, smaller steps that we're continuing to do. So the first thing I did was I couldn't find the fight battle with the big machine. So I had to make changes at the operational level first. So we looked at, for example, at the recruiting, we looked at the vendor strategy. So we need to look at, tell me those vendors who understand my profiles better and get me profiles that I need for product or problem solving, right? So that's operational changes. But the struggle that I'm going through still till today is, how do I make it sustainable? How do I retain it, right? And for that, I'm still fighting the battle now to make a business case. Nothing comes without a business case to say, if I actually cut my engineering strength, right? We're used to quantity. So if you say for product, what we need is not quantity, we need quality. So if I'm able to cut it by half and pay my people 50% more, I will actually still need lesser R&D. So this is the business case I'm working on, but it's not easy, and it's a long journey. So there's few things that have paid off is tailored talent strategy, getting our people closer to the market, and encouraging them to take ownership in terms of problem solving and giving them good type of work. And the Accenture software has been sort of a blessing for us, because we were able to work at least on a career path. Because in a typical services, you get to a senior software engineer, they don't want to touch code, right? And that's not what we want. We really want up to managing director level hands-on, right? Yeah. And those are the things I was able to sort of, it's still a lot of work to do, but able to make huge improvements. But compensation and culture, these are tough things to handle, and I think we'll get there. But we're already seeing some good improvements coming out.
It's a slow change. I mean, like, there are not enough people doing this anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, even the smartest of the college grads also don't think this way.
Exactly.
It's a slow change, but
So,
I guess,
yeah.
okay, I'm not going to push my luck anymore.
Right.